Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. This morning, we're going to be discussing the recent changes to the absence rules. This webinar, as Tony mentioned, will be recorded and we'll make it available after the webinar today, after we make it ADA compliant, and we'll be posting it on the OSPI attendance website. Shortly, you will see the attendance website link posted in the chat box. The PowerPoint was sent to participants this morning. We will be sending it to participants later today. So thank you again for joining us, and we would like to ask that you direct the questions you want us to answer in the Q&A function of Zoom, not in the chat box. The chat box is really more for your own commentary, but again, please put your questions for the panelists in the Q&A section so that we can more easily monitor and respond to you. So who are we? My name is Chrissy Johnson. I'm the Attendance Program Supervisor here at OSPI. With us today, we have Sylvia Reyna with our Migrant Program, Peggy Carlson with our Foster Youth Program, and Anissa Sherritt with our Alternative Learning Program. Thank you very much for joining us today. And we will look forward to hearing your expertise on this topic. Today, we are going to cover a number of things included in the absence rules. We'll talk about the new definition of an absence. We will talk about new language on tardies. We will go over how to report absences for exclusions, suspensions, and expulsions. We will talk about the additional reasons that were added for excused absences. And then we will hear from Peggy and Sylvia about some resources for migrant students and students in foster care. And we'll end with some attendance resources and events. Again, I'm Chrissy, and I have the pleasure of working at OSPI in supporting the state around attendance, chronic absenteeism, and reducing truancy. Here is a link to the website that will be in the PowerPoint that gets sent to participants, and that is in the chat box as well, or will be soon. So let's get started. The new definition of absence is as follows. A student is considered absent if they are not physically present on school grounds and also not participating in the following activities at an approved location: instruction, any instruction-related activity, or any other district or school-approved activity that is regulated by an instructional or academic accountability system. An example of that would be participation in district-sponsored sports. So a couple of things around this definition. We've provided guidance to schools and districts clarifying that the phrase "not physically present on school grounds" should be broadly interpreted as a student that is not in their assigned or expected setting, and they might still be on school property. So therefore, according to the adopted definition, a student skipping class but still on campus should be considered absent. So in addition, this rule is not intended to change the practice of teachers taking daily and period attendance or from marking a student absent from class when they're participating in school-related instructional events and not in their assigned class. So that practice should be maintained to ensure the safety and whereabouts of each student and to maintain data accuracy. Local student information systems typically are able to differentiate between those types of absences. Some use a term of other or exempt as a specific code. We encourage districts and schools to work with your student information system administrator or your service provider to receive support in this area. We will address questions at the end of this section, so I'm going to go through a couple of more changes and slides before we address some questions. Feel free to include them in the Q&A. There is also new language on tardies. The new language is, a school or district shall not convert or combine tardies into absences that contribute to a truancy petition. So to say that in another way, the district and school will not include tardies converted to absences as part of a truancy petition. And I'll give a couple of examples. So if your district or school has a policy that converts a student's tardy after a specific threshold, let's say 10 minutes, into a period absence, then this particular absence should not be included in any absence count, roll-up, or aggregation that supports a truancy petition. Similarly, if your district or school has a policy that combines multiple tardies, for example, 3 tardies equal 1 unexcused absence, that absence should not be included in an absence count, roll-up, or aggregation that supports the truancy petition. The district or school can consider responding with alternative actions other than a truancy petition, such as a student conference, service activity, or detention, but the new language specifically eliminates the ability to use a truancy, the truancy process for tardies. Okay, I am going to move on to a poll and questions. So I would love to get your feedback, folks that are attending. The question is, last year, did your school or district convert or combine tardies into absences? We are asking this just to really get a sense of the impact of this new rule. I will give a minute for folks to respond. All right, our responses are slowing down. So I'm going to go ahead and launch those results. So it looks like kind of across the board, with the majority of folks saying no, that they did not engage in that practice. Okay, well, thank you for your participation in that. There are no questions at this time, so we'll be moving on to the next section. Here, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about the new language around suspensions and how to report suspensions, how to report absences caused by suspensions, specifically by going into some background around the course of study and the new discipline laws. I wanted to first kick it over to Anissa Sherritt just to introduce herself before we start off this section. Anissa?
Hi everybody, I'm Anissa Sherritt and I'm the ALE program manager at OSPI. And just to share a little bit about myself, my background is in social work and I've worked in the area for about 10 years. In a variety of settings across the K-12, across kindergarten through 12th grade and even into post-secondary. And the reason that I do this work is because through those years I've seen such a need for personalized learning for students and more of a non-traditional pathway, especially students that are impacted by a variety of barriers. So I'm really passionate about creating sustainable and high quality learning environments for students that's more personalized to their needs. So I'm excited to be here today. Thanks, Chrissy, for inviting me. And I'll be back on shortly to share a little bit more about ALE.
Thanks, Anissa. All right. So the new language on reporting absences during exclusions is students shall not be absent if, 1, they have been suspended, expelled, or emergency expelled pursuant to Chapter 392-400 WAC. If they are also receiving educational services as required by oops, we need to get the RCW in there, apologies, the discipline RCW, and they are also enrolled in qualifying course of study activities as defined in WAC 392.121.107. So I do want to give a clarification for the amount of content we're going to cover in this next section. The intent is really to give you enough information on how to report absences. There is a wealth of information that has just come out in the new discipline rules, and there will be plenty of opportunity for OSPI to communicate some of those changes moving forward. So just a high level. The section of the new discipline rules that defines educational services and provides clarification on what constitutes educational services is WAC 392.400.610. And this section of the WAC is effective for 2018-19. And I want to also give a reminder that the requirement to provide educational services is not new. It has been in place since 2016. These new rules just provide some more detailed guidance. I will not read through all of these, but I just want to highlight that the new rules provide clarification on what educational services look like based on a length of the suspension. So for example, if a suspension is up to 5 days, educational services would look like providing coursework or homework from the student's classes or subjects, access to school personnel who can offer support to keep the student current, etc. And then all the way up to a suspension that lasts for more than 10 days. Educational services need to be provided in accordance with the course of study, WAC 392.121.107. So I wanted to share that with you just so that I can lead you back to the absence rules, and wanted to be clear that the absence criteria is based on the rigor of the educational services, not the length of time that a student is suspended. So if a student is suspended and they are receiving educational services, they might still need to be recorded as absent. So for example, if a student is suspended for 3 days and they're sent home with their homework, this could be considered educational services, but you would still mark them as absent. And they would be marked as excused absent. And I do want to take a moment to also say that, oh, pardon me, I think I get there later. So another requirement for students to be considered present during a suspension or exclusion is for the educational services they're receiving to be aligned with the course of study. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of the course of study. First of all, for more detailed information, you can go read, first of all, read the WAC at 392.121.107. But we also have a link here for the 2018-19 Enrollment Reporting Handbook that would provide more direction. And Becky McLean, OSPI Supervisor for Enrollment Reporting, is an excellent resource if you have further questions, and her email is linked in this PowerPoint. So as used in this chapter, the WAC here, course of study, means those activities for which students enrolled pursuant to chapters. There's a list of various chapters in the WAC. Basically may be counted as enrolled students for the purpose of full-time equivalent student enrollment counts. The first primarily being instruction, and I'll jump to the direct funded technical colleges. That is also an option. And then I'm going to hand it over to Anissa to describe in a little more detail the alternative learning experiences. Anissa?
So alternative learning experience is one option under the course of study WAC. And I'm going to give a very high level overview of what an alternative learning experience is. If you're interested in learning more, I would be happy to connect with you after the webinar. But alternative learning experience, or what's commonly referred to as ALE, is a method for determining full-time equivalent enrollment, or FTE. And it's a process that school districts or charter schools can use to claim state funding for instruction that happens in part or in whole away from a classroom or a typical school setting. And ALE is offered at the course level for students in grades 9 through 12, and through grade level coursework for students in grades K through 8. That means that ALE is defined by courses or coursework, not necessarily by the student or by a particular program. And ALE is driven by a written student learning plan, also commonly referred to as a WSLP, and is overseen by a certificated teacher. And again, if you're interested in learning more about the rules for claiming ALE enrollment, they are outlined in WAC 392, 121, 182, and I just realized that that WAC is not linked on this slide, but I would be happy to talk with you for more information about that WAC and what some of the rules are. Next slide. So once a student is enrolled into an ALE course, there are different attendance expectations than what you would find in a traditional course where attendance is taken daily. In ALE, there are requirements such as weekly contact and monthly progress that take the place of regular daily attendance. So a student might not have a daily attendance record of whether they're present or absent in the student information system, and attendance in ALE is not dependent on the definitions that are discussed here in this webinar. Instead of a daily attendance record, there are certain components outlined in the ALE rules, which is again WAC 392, 121, 182, and those various components are required to be retained for auditing purposes. And the enrollment that is claimed for an ALE course is subject to audit by the state auditor's office. So although ALE does not meet the traditional definition of attendance in terms of being present, absent, or tardy each day, the 20-day enrollment rule still applies to ALE. That means if a student has not been in contact with the educational setting in 20 days, then they are not eligible to be claimed for enrollment. So that is a really brief, high-level overview of what ALE is. There are a lot more specifics that I would be happy to share with anyone interested at a later time. Thanks, Chrissy.
Thank you, Anissa. Much appreciated. I think we have a couple of questions that have come in, and I appreciate the questions. We will respond by email to some of them after the webinar. But I do want to turn to a couple of questions we have had from folks in the past. One being, what if a student is offered educational services but they do not participate? How would they be reported? Are they considered absent? So these students would be marked as excused absent, not unexcused. Students that are suspended or expelled should not be marked as unexcused. Another question we get is, can a school or district claim state funds for students that are suspended or expelled and receiving educational services? And the answer for that is yes. There's more information in the enrollment reporting handbook. Okay, I don't think that there are any more questions aside from the one that came in we will respond to. And so I would like to launch our next poll. Give me just one moment while I load the next poll. And the question is, do you still have questions about this topic, educational services during exclusion and absence reporting? Answer to this question will help us determine future professional development and technical assistance. So if you would. Okay. Thank you very much for your participation. And here are the results. So thank you for that. I think we have some opportunity for further technical assistance. And we answered some questions. So I do want to take a second and read one of the questions. I think there was maybe some confusion around how you could be providing educational services and still be considered absent. And that is exactly my point, that there are clear guidelines in the new discipline, but in the WAC, that specify what constitutes educational services. For example, if a student is suspended for 3 days, you could send them home with a homework packet and they would have access to school personnel. They would have an opportunity to make up their work or an activity in class that they missed it. That would be considered educational services. According to the absence rules, we are saying that all instruction that is delivered during a suspension needs to be aligned with the course of study. That does not include a homework packet. So there is a different rigor expected in order for a student to be considered present. If you have further questions about that, please let me know. There will be, as I said, more guidance coming out from, and there is more guidance on the OSPI Student Discipline website. There is a technical guide, an FAQ, and a press release that just came out yesterday. So there's a lot of new information around the discipline rules in general and educational services. Okay, moving on. We have added a number of categories to the list of reasons that students should be considered excused. The first of those being medical appointments or absences that are due to counseling, inpatient, outpatient, for mental health or chemical dependency, or medical appointments for pregnancy. We've added court-ordered activities as a reason for excused absences. Absences due to a student's foster care or dependency status, absences due to a student's migrant status, and absences due to safety concerns that include bullying. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Sylvia Reyna to discuss supports for migrant students.
Thank you, Chrissy. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sylvia Reyna. I am a program supervisor with the Title I Part C Migrant Education Program. I've had the wonderful privilege of working in the Migrant Education Program for more than 20 years. I know my picture doesn't show it, but it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey with migrant education. As a former migrant student in the Washington State area, we know how important it is to continue to have our students access educational services as they migrate across the state or across the country. So in Washington State, we are the third largest migratory student population, identifying students ages 3 through 21. In Washington State, as you know, we're agriculture and fishing industry strong. And so we rely on not only seasonal farm workers, but also our migratory families who come in, help with the harvesting, and then may either stay in your communities or continue on to other work. and or to their home states. Many of them work for, the economic necessity as well as personal subsistence. Our migratory patterns in Washington State vary depending on your area, and so sometimes students may leave before school is out, or they may arrive after school has started, because depending on if they're working in apple harvesting. Some people may leave during the winter terms just because they want to go to a more warmer climate where their income can stretch a little bit longer, further, while they're out of work. And then also they may return later after the winter break period. So they may be coming back not necessarily in December when school starts back up, but maybe at the end of January, sometimes even mid-February. We do have some families that will leave, go to California, and then come back in the spring. So we do have quite a different migratory pattern across the state. And then there are some families that stay during the school year and then migrate during the summer, but that is still considered a migratory lifestyle. Because of that, and because some of our families may be a bit longer out of your communities, but they intend to come back, they may still be identified as absent, but continually enrolled. And so under those WACs referenced here, we want to ensure that as families are leaving, and if they notify you that they will be leaving, but they want to continue to enroll your students or their children, and you want to continue having them enrolled, you can do so under those parameters with the 2-monthly enrollment count. But we want to make sure that this is not something that's going to impact their education. It will not have an adverse effect on their educational progress. So we want to make sure that we can identify if indeed the continuing to keep them enrolled is appropriate and that we have agreements in place. And what we've identified is that if it's temporary in nature, that we have an agreement that is between the school and the parent or the guardian of the student, and again, that it is not going to adversely affect their educational progress. In some cases with our younger students, we do see that they can continue. They're not necessarily at that stage in their academics where it would be an adverse effect on their educational progress. But as they move into middle school and high school, sometimes it does start to impact their educational progress. And in those cases, you'd want to just make sure that all the teachers are in accordance with developing an extended absence agreement. And we have created a sample, and I apologize, it's tiny, tiny print on your screen, but we also can make it available to you if you are very, very interested in it. But this is just a little template of how we can capture that agreement between the parents, the student, and the teaching staff to make sure we have a plan for while they're going to be gone, what we're trying to work on, and what the students should be trying to continue learning, and then what is the plan when they return back to your community. And so we have some guidance there, and want to make sure that, again, we are not adversely impacting their education if we do indeed develop an extended absence agreement. Oh, okay. Tiny print, I apologize, and I didn't print it out for myself, but basically just outlines the agreement between the school and the family and the student, and that we note that it will not have, that they will not be attending any other school, U.S. school while they are gone, and that they are doing well in their courses, and that they have assignments or have some work that they will be working on as they're gone. And then it just has a signature of the building principal and the parent or the guardian. And then when they return, there's a process in place for getting them back in their course of study and trying to catch them up on what they may have missed during that period of time that they were absent. And it sounds like I have a couple of questions. Let me see. So the first question is about how do I know if their absence is due to their migratory lifestyle? Well, part of it is also if you are running a migrant program, we do have recruiters that have been trained to identify those migratory patterns and lifestyles. So it could be, they could even say that they're leaving for work. In the winter time, it would be, we do know that some of it is economic necessities. So what you would want to do is just look to see, why would they be returning to your community? What is the impetus for coming back to your community? And if it's because of the work that they will continue, then that would be part of your migratory lifestyle reasons. So you want to look for those patterns. I do have some resources that I'll be showing in just a little bit, but we do have a wonderful office based in Sunnyside who also can help you to identify those migratory patterns. And the second question is the extended absence agreement for migrant students only. It isn't, actually. We've been talking about it in-house, and that it could be something that the district would like to use with other student populations, and that's fine. It's just something we created to try and help schools and families who decide to keep their students enrolled, to help them stay on course. And is there an example on our website? I believe we did post it, but I will confirm. And let me just show you our resource and guidance information. So that's our website to the left, WWK12, Migrant Bilingual. And then we have some examples of resources that are available to you. We do have some additional guidance under that extended absence in migrant bilingual programs. And then to the right is the website I was sharing with you regarding the Migrant Student Data Recruitment and Support Office. It's in Sunnyside. And they also are a wonderful resource for determining if indeed the family is demonstrating a migratory characteristics. I think that's all the questions. Okay. Well, thank you so very, very much. It was my pleasure to be part of this morning's component. I'm going to pass it on to Peggy and have her share on her report.
Cool. Good morning, everyone. I'm Peggy Carlson. I am the program supervisor for the foster care education program here at OSPI. My role is to support school districts in providing educational stability for students who are in foster care. And I can tell you in Washington State, we have about, on any given day, about 9,000 kids in foster care, and about half of them are school-age kids. The new rules mention foster care status, and I think people have asked if this means that all absences for a student in foster care are to be excused, and the answer to that is no. Kids in foster care still can have unexcused absences, but any absence that's related to their foster care status should be excused, must be excused. So what are those examples? Parent and sibling visitation. Oftentimes, the students will have court-ordered visitation with parents or siblings, and a lot of times that's during school hours, and those absences would need to be excused. Family team decision-making meetings, that's where the social worker and biological parents and foster parents all get together and make big decisions. Those are often scheduled during the school day as well. Any court-related visits or appointments would be excused. The change in placement, so if a student goes home to one foster family at night and then is removed from that home and placed in a different foster home and misses school the next day, that would need to be excused. Medical appointments and that's in the regular rules too. So if it's counseling, medical, dental, a lot of times when a student is first entered into foster care, the foster parents are required to have a full appointment where they check to make sure everything's okay and where the student is psychologically, physically, dentally. And so oftentimes the only time they can get those appointments are during the school day. And then obviously meeting with a social worker would be excused as well. Another question that has come up is that, well, if all of these are excused, then, you know, isn't this foster student going to fall behind? And that's absolutely true. And that's why there's this law. It's RCW 28A.225.023. And basically what that law states is that schools are responsible to get together with foster parents, social workers, other important people in that student's life to look at those absences and try to come up with a plan to either change appointments and make it so that the student is missing less school, or to help the student catch up so that they don't fall behind or that they don't miss credits because of issues that really are out of the student's control. The kids don't get to decide when the adults are making all of these appointments. That law went into effect in 2013, and I think it's a good law. I've got a lot of resources on here. That the top one is the school district foster care liaisons. Every school district is required to designate a foster care liaison, and that person is responsible for making sure kids in foster care stay in their school of origin, that they have transportation. They coordinate, those liaisons coordinate with Children's Administration. So that would be the go-to person in your district, and you can find who that is by going to our OSPI website and clicking on the liaison tab, and it'll separate it by districts, and you can find out who that person is. Children's Administration, and I need to change this slide because it still has the old agency name. Their agency changed names in July 1st. They are now the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. So they also have education leads per region. So each DCYF region has an ed lead, and those names are also on the OSPI website. So if you need to connect with a social worker, it would probably be best to start with the ed lead, and they can connect you to the right person related to the student that you're working with. Mm-hmm. Treehouse, Educational Advocates and Specialists. Treehouse is a nonprofit organization that is amazing. They provide great support for kids in care, and they are located all throughout the state. You can go on their website to see everything they offer, everything from Little Wishes, where they can help kids pay for prom tickets or dresses, or they can help kids get their driver's license, pay for all the costs associated with the driver's license, and actually reimburse foster parents for insurance so that kids in foster care can actually drive. So I encourage you to go to that website to look at all of the amazing resources they offer. They also have educational advocates who will work with kids when issues come up, and they're very familiar with the schools and with the social workers, so they make a good match. The AHCC, that's Apple Health Coordinated Care. All students in foster care are covered under Apple Health Coordinated Care, and these AHCC liaisons they're amazing. They can, so say you have an instance where a student needs their wisdom teeth pulled and you need to try and find a provider that will work outside of school hours. Those liaisons can help you identify a provider that will take students that have this coverage. and providers that work outside of normal hours. So I encourage you to use those in order to try and coordinate better health appointments. And then, of course, we have our OSPI foster care page that has a lot of information about what the federal laws are and the state laws related to foster care. My contact information is on there as well. And I also put on the Guide to Supporting Students in Foster Care, which is also on our website. That's a comprehensive guide that was created by Children's Administration, OSPI, and Treehouse. And it covers pretty much every topic you could think of that would be related to a student in foster care. It's very comprehensive, and there's a digital version available. It's interactive. It's great. So I encourage you to go to that website, to the OSPI website, to look at all the goodies on there and see. And if you have questions, you can email me as well. That contact information is on there. Thank you for having me. This was fun. I'm going to give it back to Chrissy now.
Thank you, Peggy. I'll take a second just to check. Are there any questions at this time? I think we do have one question. The question is, do foster parents know of these changes regarding absences so they clearly notify the office staff of reasons for absence? Many times parents just give excuses like appointment. Will it require our office staff to probe a little more?
So I'm not sure if foster parents know about these new rules yet, but that's a great idea, and I can do some outreach with them to let them know about these reasons. But I would say if a student is in foster care and the foster parent writes a note that says they had an appointment, that would qualify as an excused absence.
And then another question, sometimes the liaisons and leads may have questions when the student has disabilities. Who can these people turn to?
They have questions. What is it?
When the student has disabilities?
Oh. Well, I guess it would depend on what the specific question was. I would encourage you to contact the people in your district, the special ed folks, and coordinate with them.
We used to be able to download a foster care list from Cedars. Will that be made available again?
Actually, the student information people are getting that information ready to be in Cedars, and the foster care liaisons will be able to run a report of all of the students who are in foster care in their district soon.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for your questions. And thanks, Peggy. There was one other question about, I think we're getting more questions about what constitutes a course of study. So what does a course of study need to look like in order for a student not to be absent, and questions about educational services. So we have a number of other folks in the agency that are not here today, and that can help answer those questions, and I will provide their contact information for you at the end of the PowerPoint. So I wanted to shift before we wrap up today to some resources that we have available to address attendance. And before I do that, I just want to take a step back and say that I really appreciate having Peggy and Sylvia here today, because we know that certain populations are at higher risk for absences, and we are doing our best to collaborate to ameliorate some of those absences. And when those absences can't be ameliorated, we provide schools with the supports and resources to try to support students to stay up as much as possible on their instruction and academic progress. And now shifting to some other resources we have. So we're coming up on the beginning of school, and September is National Attendance Awareness Month. That is an awareness effort spearheaded by the wonderful organization Attendance Works, and Washington is throwing our hat in. Again, we've done this the last couple of years. This is our attendance communications website, and we have a number of resources available for you, including posters and buttons and pop sockets all available to order for free. We have limited supplies, so get your orders in fast and we will ship those out to you for free. We are encouraging superintendents to participate in the National Superintendent Call to Action. And we are doing a social media campaign. You can sign up for the attendance newsletter. The link is on the left. And we will be sending out social media posts, tweets, and Facebook posts. And that will make it easy for you to just copy and paste and participate in raising awareness. Oftentimes we find that there is a significant amount of behavior change that can be influenced simply by talking about the importance of attendance and raising awareness. And oftentimes, especially in elementary school, we find that parents take their kids out of school and just don't realize the impact of those absences. And so having those conversations, those positive awareness raising conversations can have a huge boost in attendance. And we also we've partnered with DSHS and the Seahawks and the Sounders, and so we've got a number of resources available, including a wake-up call and a robocall from some of our local celebrity sports players. Just a highlight of several attendance events coming up tomorrow at 11 a.m. You can sign up here for the Attendance Works webinar that will be focusing on partnering with community partners, and it's called Team Up for Attendance, Community Matters. Our graduation, a team effort, does monthly webinars, and we'll have two on Wednesday, September 12th, one at 10 and one at 1 o'clock. The first one will talk about Tier 1 supports, and the second one we will be focusing on supporting students with disabilities to improve attendance. And the GATE advisory in September is also focusing on attendance as well, and that will be at ESD 113 in Tumwater on the 18th from 9 to 12. So before we sign off and say goodbye, I want to ask for some evaluation questions. We are very interested in making sure that we are providing technical assistance that is meaningful to Washington State schools, and would love for your feedback here. Okay. I'll wait just about 10 more seconds to get the last participants in. Thanks for your patience. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to give feedback. One last thing I would like to ask for you to do is in the chat box, if you have topics related to attendance that you would like more information on, more support, more professional development, tools, resources, we would love your feedback. And then lastly, there is a huge team of people here at OSPI that has a significant amount of expertise around this topic, and this topic is huge, as you can tell. It touches on a lot of different areas. So here is a great list of resources for you. I will highlight, because a lot of the questions today were about educational services. Josh Lynch is the Student Discipline and Behavior Program Supervisor. His email is right here. I encourage you to reach out to him on those discipline-specific questions around educational services. And if you have questions about CEDAR's reporting, I've included Lisa Ireland's email address here. Becky McLean, also an important staff member here to help with enrollment reporting questions. So with that, I want to thank you so much for your time. Thank our team here, even above and beyond Peggy and Sylvia. We have a lot of people here supporting the logistical end of this webinar, and especially Kepi Anderson for her beautiful graphics in the PowerPoint. So thank you to everyone in the room, and thanks everyone for joining us this morning. If there were any unanswered questions, we will be sure to follow up with you after the webinar, and we will also be sending the PowerPoint out to you all. And Anissa, I apologize, Anissa's not in the room with us. Thank you, Anissa, for participating. Okay, have a great morning. Thank you.